He stepped into the underground fighting world to keep his fallen friend's last promise. Can he bring down the crime empire from within? You're on Flashback Recap. Let's go! The movie starts with a prisoner named Bone who gets confronted by a group of inmates trying to bully him. However, it quickly backfires as Bone is a skilled martial artist and effortlessly knocks them all out in seconds. Bone has spent years in prison, but now he's finally getting out. After his release, he heads to Los Angeles and rents an apartment from a woman named Tamara. During their meeting, Tamara makes it clear that she doesn't want any trouble in her building and lays out some strict rules that Bone must follow if he wants to stay there. The scene then moves to an underground fight club run by a man named James. He has a top fighter named Hammerman who has never lost a fight and is known for brutally finishing off his opponents. One night, Hammerman faces off against a fighter backed by a promoter named Pinball. Unfortunately, Pinball's fighter is no match for Hammerman, who quickly knocks him out and nearly kills him before Pinball intervenes. Frustrated by the loss, Pinball pays James, who is also notorious for being a bully. After a rough night, Pinball gets into his car and finds Bone waiting for him, proposing a deal. Initially, Pinball isn't interested since he doesn't know Bone and has no idea what kind of fighter he is. He tells Bone that Hammerman is dangerous and he doesn't want to risk his money on an unknown fighter. However, Bone insists and offers Pinball a tempting deal. He'll give Pinball 20% of his earnings or 40% if Pinball puts his own money on the line. They agree to work together. Bone heads to the fighting arena, where he spots James and his girlfriend Angela. Sensing a connection between Bone and Angela, James warns her to stay away from Bone and makes it clear to Bone that Angela is his. Pinball immediately gets to work, arranging Bone's first fight against a well-known underground fighter. However, Bone's opponent is no match for him, and Bone finishes the fight with just 2 powerful kicks. His performance impresses everyone, especially Pinball, who is eager to continue working with him. Pinball becomes Bone's regular promoter, and Bone is determined to quickly make a name for himself in the underground fighting scene. His ultimate goal is to face the best in the business, Hammerman. Later, while in the car, Bone can't stop thinking about Angela and asks Pinball about her. Pinball advises Bone to stay away, explaining that Angela was married, but James framed her husband for murder, landing him in prison. Angela ended up with James, became pregnant, but James forced her to have an abortion. Ever since, Angela has been struggling, turning to drugs, and unable to break free from James, even though she doesn't care for him. Later on, during a business meeting, we see that James is ruthless. He doesn't hesitate to kill anyone who crosses him. During a meeting, James shoots a man simply because the man said something James didn't like. Meanwhile, Bone meets Roberto, a neighbor in his building, and they often spend time together playing chess. Bone also befriends Jared, a young boy adopted by Tamara after his father went to prison. As Bone settles into his new life, Pinball arrives and they head back to the underground fighting arena. That night, Bone defeats several fighters, none of whom can stand up to him. He and Pinball also expose a promoter involved in fraudulent activities. On this night, Bone cements his reputation in the underground fighting world, taking down every fighter he faces and earning thousands of dollars for both himself and Pinball. Now a renowned fighter, Bone trains relentlessly even though he's already a master, because his ultimate goal is to beat the best. One evening, when Bone returns to his building, Tamara notices the wounds on his face. As she helps clean them, she shares her concerns about her adopted son, who has been acting out. Feeling sympathy for the boy, Bone starts training Jared in martial arts the next day. Elsewhere, James murders a woman in an alley, an act witnessed by Roberto. Bone finally gets the fight he has been aiming for, and when it begins, the crowd is stunned by his invincibility. Even the most feared fighter in the arena stands no chance against him, and Bone finishes the fight unharmed. James, surprised by Bone's dominance, pays Pinball and invites both of them to dinner. At the dinner, James offers Bone a deal. The international underground fighting scene is controlled by a group of wealthy, powerful men known as the Consortium, mainly led by a black market arms dealer named Franklin McVeigh. James wants Bone to fight Pretty Boy Price, the reigning champion. Bone listens to the offer, but not trusting James, tells him he'll think about it. James then instructs Angela to seduce Bone into accepting the deal. When Bone is alone with Angela, he reveals that he was a cellmate and close friend of her husband, Danny. He tells her that Danny was murdered by a gang under James's orders. Heartbroken by this news, Angela is overwhelmed with grief. Bone consoles her and promises to free her from James and teach him a lesson. Angela confides in Bone, revealing that after Danny was imprisoned, she gave birth to a baby, but she doesn't have custody and doesn't even know where her child is. Bone reassures her that he knows where her son is and promises to reunite them soon. He advises her to quit drugs, warning that her addiction could cost her custody of her son. Bone shares his plans with her and tells James he's still considering the fight offer without giving a final answer. He then takes Angela to a rehab center, hoping she will overcome her addiction. The next day, James meets with the influential mobster McVeigh, offering him $5 million to secure the consortium's approval and arrange a fight between Bone and Price. That night, Bone discovers that Roberto has been brutally killed by James' dogs outside the apartment, targeted because he witnessed one of James's street murders. Bone is devastated by Roberto's death, as he was a good man and a true friend. Tamara is also deeply shaken by Roberto's sudden passing and starts to break down, but Bone tries to comfort her. Meanwhile, Pinball is at a club when Hammerman shows up, attacking and torturing him to get Bone's location because he wants revenge. Just as Hammerman is about to severely beat Pinball, Bone arrives and confronts Hammerman, saving Pinball. Bone then turns down James's offer to fight for him. In retaliation, James orders his thugs to hunt down Bone and Pinball and to retrieve Angela from the rehab center. However, Bone anticipates James's move, knowing that James would try to kidnap Angela to lure him in after Bone refused to fight. When James's men go after Angela, they run into Bone, who easily defeats them all. Frustrated by these setbacks, James calls Bone directly to negotiate, sending his live location through his bodyguard's phone. Bone and Pinball follow James to McVeigh's mansion, where James repeats his demand. He wants Bone to fight Price for a big payout, threatening to kill Pinball, Jared, Angela, and Tamara if he refuses. Bone reveals his true intentions, telling James that he was Danny's close friend and that he's there to avenge Danny's death. He also promises to free Angela and reunite her with her son. Furious, James loses control and begins to confess all his crimes, admitting that he had Danny set up and murdered. Unbeknownst to James, Bone secretly records this confession through the GPS phone and transmits it to Pinball's cell phone, who then forwards the video to the police. Bone then faces off against Price, but just as he's about to win, he taps the ground and forfeits the match. Enraged, James grabs a katana and attacks Bone. McVeigh's bodyguard throws Bone a gene to even the odds, but Bone drops the sword and uses the sheath instead, beating James with it. During the fight, Bone redirects a sword slash, causing James to sever his own hand. Bone escapes before the police arrive to arrest James. The next day, Angela is finally reunited with her son Jared. Tamara, who had initially considered evicting Bone due to his ties with James, offers him a place to stay. However, Bone declines, saying he doesn't want to cause any more trouble. Before leaving, he gives Tamara an envelope filled with cash, asking her to take Angela in once she completes her rehabilitation. Bone also parts ways with Pinball, explaining that he has other matters to attend to.